And so, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports, which
Okay,
is
so
always
we've blockaded their
portfolio to
blockade. So
use.
they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well.
Representative Seth Moulton just walked into a congressional hearing, sat across from Senator Pete Hegseth, and asked him one simple question. Do you know what your war cost the average American? Senator Pete Hegseth paused. Then he said, $600. $600 out of your pocket for a war nobody voted on. And then Representative Seth Moulton looked at him and said, you told soldiers, no quarter, no mercy. That's a war crime. This hearing did not stay polite. Let's break it down.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking
war,
you, do you think
the
it was
president
smart or
was the first
feckless?
one to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or not.
Do you think the president or you deserve more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the chairman
Mr.
and
Secretary.
everybody else as those
Mr. Secretary,
critical
I'm asking the
decisions were
questions.
made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm
to
just
making
asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you think it was a good idea or not?
As I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
To start this
in the
war.
hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's
Just imagine.
Which, by the way,
if they had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal was going to allow them
including
to do,
the first Trump administration,
they had one.
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports, which
Okay,
is
so
always
we've blockaded
portfolio
their
to
blockade.
use.
So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Kaine, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the strait?
Sir, thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents. To
Okay, I'm
include
just
the president.
asking if the military
Yes,
had
sir.
plans.
As always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So,
and we
Mr.
always
Secretary,
do that.
did you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
So then
because
why did you
this
send the
department looks,
minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
we have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be aware of at the classified level.
Okay, and
to deal
so,
with, to deal with
by the way, would
mines.
the
And
Trump-class battleships have helped with this?
you're talking about a
Minesweeping.
prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you Iran is financially devastated right now. In
Okay, well,
conjunction with the
they've
Treasury
earned about
and
$14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury. They're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a Navy. They can't contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them
What kind of
militarily
a
and
Navy can
financially,
they buy
they're at a
for
place
$14 billion?
where they have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on
No, I'm just asking.
for years and decades.
But let's just say
Sitting in
it's
this
$100 billion.
position, it's hard to imagine how
You know
Congress
that?
allowed those things to happen. You were a part
You know
of that
the
war.
answer to that?
So was I. I never
I'm
knew
just
what the end
asking if
state
you know
clearly
what your
was.
war
Now I
costs
know
the
what the
average
end state
American
is.
taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield
I'm
over
just
us?
asking if you know the cost of the average American
I'm asking
taxpayer.
you what the
It's about
cost would be of
$600.
that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly, on March 13th in a press conference, you said, we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective
Okay, so
as
just to
humanly
be clear,
possible,
you
which
called
they are.
Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the
Congratulations,
laws
Mr.
that we're giving them are
Gentleman's
unlawful.
time's expired.
breakdown.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee.
Representative Seth Moulton, a Democrat from Massachusetts, walks up to the microphone. He is not just a politician. He is a Marine Corps veteran who served 4 tours in Iraq. He has seen war up close. Sitting across from him is Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, a former TV host and now one of the strongest defenders of the war against Iran. This is not going to be a friendly exchange. The opening move. Moulton starts calmly. He does not attack right away. He says they actually agree on something. Iran is a real threat to the United States and its allies. Then he shifts. Earlier in the hearing, Hegseth had called Democrats feckless for asking questions about the war. Moulton responds with one powerful question. Was Congress smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions before the Iraq War? That question hits hard. Everyone knows what happened in Iraq. Congress did not ask enough questions. The war lasted 20 years. Hegseth tries to avoid the comparison. He says this is different. Moulton does not argue. He simply says, it was probably a good idea to ask tough questions back then. And he moves on. Did you advise the president? Moulton asks directly. Did you advise the president to attack Iran? Hegseth gives a standard answer. He says he cannot discuss private conversations with the president. So Moulton changes direction. He asks, do you think the president had enough information? Then he goes further. Are you afraid to take ownership of this decision? That question hangs in the air. Hegseth still does not answer directly. Instead, he talks about the danger of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Moulton quickly responds. He points out that there was already a deal in place to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Even the Trump administration had kept parts of that approach. So if the goal was to stop nuclear weapons, there were already tools working. This war was not unavoidable. It was a choice. Are we winning? Moulton asks the question people care about most. Are we winning? Hegseth answers confidently. He says the military operation has been a huge success. Moulton asks again, are we winning the war? Hegseth says yes. Then Moulton delivers the key moment. Do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning? The room shifts. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways in the world. About 20% of global oil passes through it. If it closes, prices go up everywhere. Gas becomes more expensive. Food becomes more expensive. Life becomes more expensive. And right now, it is closed. Hegseth responds by saying the United States has countered Iran by blockading their ports. Moulton cuts through that argument. That is not winning. That is a standoff. He compares it to a simple idea. Two sides just hitting back at each other without progress. Mutual damage is not victory. The military planning question. Moulton then asks whether the military planned for this situation. Did they expect Iran might close the strait? The general at the table gives a careful answer but does not clearly say yes or no. Hegseth steps in and says they did plan for it. He mentions actions taken before the war and talks about military capabilities. That may be true, but the fact remains, the strait is still closed. So either the plan did not work, or the situation was always expected to become a standoff. Moulton's point stays the same. This does not look like winning. The sanctions question. Now Moulton turns to money. He asks how much Iran has gained after sanctions were lifted at the start of the war. Hegseth says Iran is under heavy financial pressure and has lost strength. Moulton responds with a sharp question. How many missiles could Iran buy with billions of dollars? This raises a serious concern. If Iran has more money from oil sales, that money could be used to buy weapons. Hegseth denies that Iran is buying weapons like that, but he does not provide details. Moulton leaves it there for people to think about. The $600 question. This is the moment many people will remember. Moulton asks, if this war costs $100 billion, what does that mean for the average American? Hegseth avoids the question at first. Moulton keeps pushing. Finally, Hegseth answers, about $600 per person. Moulton turns that number into something real. He asks whether Americans have an extra $600 to spend on this war. For many people, $600 is not small. It can be rent, bills, groceries, or savings. Hegseth responds by asking what it would cost if Iran had nuclear weapons. That is an important question, but it does not answer the one Moulton asked. The war crime question. Moulton saves the toughest issue for last. He brings up a past statement where Hegseth said, "No quarter, no mercy." Moulton explains clearly that under international law, this kind of language can mean no prisoners and no survivors, which could be considered a war crime. He asks directly, do you stand by that statement? Hegseth talks about supporting troops and winning wars, but he does not take back the statement. He does not say it was a mistake. Moulton then points out a contradiction. Hegseth had accused critics of being disloyal for raising legal concerns. But when his own words raise legal questions, he stands by them. That point stays on the record. Then time runs out. What this means. This hearing was about more than just one argument. Moulton wanted to show that the same mistakes made before the Iraq War could be happening again. Not asking enough questions. Assuming military success means overall victory. Ignoring long-term costs. He also connected the war to everyday life. Higher prices, taxpayer costs, real financial impact. Hegseth, on the other hand, stayed focused on defending the strategy. He gave broad answers and avoided direct admissions. He did not change his position. This was real oversight. Direct questions, careful answers, clear disagreement. The war is still early. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The cost is already being felt, and key questions remain unanswered. Now it is up to people watching to decide what they believe.